Hello again to another Agakala React, and today we will be watching SolarPunk Cities, Our Last Hope from Dami Lee. And I watched something in regards of some other, I think it was Cyberpunk Cities or something like that from her before, and it was interesting. She have really good quality videos, so let's just watch and see.
There's a genre of sci-fi that gives us a glimpse into the future that's totally different. In fact, the polar opposite of the dystopia that we see in Cyberpunk. And it's called SolarPunk. It's idyllic, it's sustainable, it's communal. And it's
With some glasses on her.
a yogurt ad. In fact, unlike Cyberpunk, there's not a whole lot of examples of good solarpunk in mass media, and the best visual examples seem to be kind of missing the point. When we analyzed solarpunk from an architectural and urban planning point of view, we found out just how many parallels there were to our reality. So, solarpunk, could this be our future?
A portion of this video is sponsored by HP and Intel.
This video is probably one of the best depictions of solarpunk. It's a future where we merge future technology with ecocentric values, and we thrive in harmony with nature. But the more we learned about the movement, we realized the existence of this video is actually the antithesis of solarpunk. The punk in both solarpunk and cyberpunk refers to rebellion. Cyberpunk is against an oppressive techno-dystopia, and solarpunk is against consumerism and capitalism, which is leading to the destruction of the planet. The solar is both literal and metaphorical. Literally, it represents solar and other renewable energies, and metaphorically, it's talking about this beacon of light in a dark cyberpunk world run by corporate interests. So an ad using these beautiful solarpunk aesthetics and using this utopian vision to convince people to buy their products seems very anti-solarpunk. And unlike cyberpunk, which is a huge part of pop culture, the real solarpunk seems to only exist in cli-fi novels or in a really small niche section of the internet. There are films and video games out there that fit the solarpunk aesthetic, but they don't quite fit the true definition of solarpunk when it comes to the social or cultural aspects. Socially, it emphasizes unity, a shared responsibility, and harmony between both nature and fellow humans. And the combination of these words kind of immediately make you think of a cult. And why is that?
Skull!
Maybe it's Hollywood, who's done a really good job of glamorizing this idea of the sexy, rugged rebel with a six-pack on a motorbike navigating this dark dystopian world. I mean, there's nothing really sexy about Ryan Gosling in a farmer's market. Okay, that's pretty odd.
Okay.
Let's look at Wakanda from Black Panther. It's probably one of the few iconic solarpunk visions from Hollywood. It's the most technologically advanced country in the world, but instead of a city like this, it's surrounded by sweeping valleys and mountains. Technically, Wakanda doesn't qualify as solarpunk because it's a matriarchal society, and it's not really culturally diverse, but there is a beautiful integration of technology into the city's fabric. And at the same time, the entire society is grounded in traditions that's passed down for generations. But I think the most solarpunk elements of Wakanda actually came from the location of the Golden City, and this abrupt transition between the city and the surrounding landscape. If you look at any North American city, the periphery is surrounded by highways and suburbs. Something like 52% of Americans live in suburbs. Suburbs emerged partly because cities were polluted and dangerous and weren't really nice to live in. So in the 50s and 60s, as soon as we had this sudden boom in car ownership, people realized, hey, I could live in bigger houses with green space for less money if I just moved out of the city. But studies show that suburban dwellers emit up to 4 times the amount of emission than people living in urban areas. Because you're dependent on cars, there's longer commutes, and you're sharing less and less resources. And the creation of a new suburb often consumes natural habitats and agricultural lands. Suburbs also lead to segregated neighborhoods with very little cultural or social diversity, which can contribute to a bigger socioeconomic divide. Rather than trying to address the problems in the city, we simply moved our population to the outskirts, and to this day, in many parts of North America, suburbs keep growing. It's ironic because the idea of a tight-knit community living in open space with greenery, there is a lot of parallels to SolarPunk ideals. In fact, both the design of suburbs and SolarPunk were inspired by the same idea, the Garden City movement. If you want to talk about real polluted and dirty cities, we have to look at London, England during the late 19th century. Industrialization completely transformed London into one of the most slummy, disgusting, unhealthy places to live in. Sanitation was virtually non-existent, and the factories, they just dumped everything into the river, which is also where they got their drinking water. Because the Industrial Revolution was completely unprecedented, and cities just weren't equipped to handle the kind of influx of people in factories. This is when Ebenezer Howard, an urban planner from London, came up with this utopian concept for cities living in nature and called them Garden Cities of Tomorrow, a group of slumless, smokeless cities. Each city or community would have a central district that was dedicated to industry and work. From there, you have concentric rings of housing, gardens, agriculture, leisure space, and civic institutions. These circles were just supposed to be diagrammatic, but I think what's interesting is that these circular green belts were a boundary, and you could limit the growth of the population by design.
Yeah, so far that's very interesting. The idea of it, I think, came from the right place, but probably we can't say that we have that much of, like she said, there's not that many examples of it in the culture, because I think people kind of rather see that someone is living in the worst conditions than they do. I think a lot of, like, if it comes about cyberpunk, yeah, we do sometimes like those really nice, cutesy things, obviously, too, to make a thing, but usually if you kind of look at it, it's mostly just really like a fantasy thing, isn't it? Something that we know straight up that it's not attainable, not possible to actually have. Well, in this case, this is something that, would be possible, and it's not, so I'm feeling bad about it, and I don't want to see it. That's what I think. I might be mistaken, but let's just keep watching.
Design. And when you limit growth, you can also control the density, the cost, and the quality of life. He even suggested rough sizes. Each city would be roughly 6,000 acres, with anywhere between 32,000 to 58,000 people, and the city ring would occupy 1/6 of that space, leaving the rest to green space. These experimental garden cities started to pop up all over America and the UK, but very few actually became successful because while it had the look of a garden city, it lacked a lot of the other characteristics, like an industry, food production, civic institutions, meaning people would still need to take their cars and drive to get to these places, which in turn created suburbs. But before we continue, a message from our sponsor, HP and Intel. I'm always on the go, so the ideal laptop for me is portable and lightweight. A 14-inch laptop can adapt to every situation, and I want as many options as possible when it comes to ports, like a full-size HDMI port and a USB-A. But even if this laptop is tiny, it doesn't mean that you can't use Rhino and other apps at the same time. The HP EliteBook 1040 can be equipped with up to 64 gigabytes of RAM, and this version has a 13th generation Intel processor with 14 cores. HP and Intel came together and developed an exclusive feature called HP SmartSense, which provides scalable performance that allows high processing power within a design that stays light, cool, and quiet. The HP Presence app offers some really great features for virtual conferencing, like connecting multiple cameras at the same time. In this case, I'm using my second camera to frame the top of my desk, and the Keystone feature automatically reframes the view based on the size of your document. With Auto Camera Select, AI recognizes the camera that I'm looking at, so I never have to break eye contact. There's lots of other features that I really like about this laptop, like the physical camera shutter, fingerprint scanner, and really great speakers. So if you want to know more about the HP EliteBook 1040, check the link in the description. But maybe
cool.
we need to look outside of North America. This is Almere in Flevoland, Netherlands, which was also inspired by the Garden City movement, and according to an article in Blue Labyrinth, could be considered the very first real-world solarpunk city. Almere is only possible thanks to modern engineering. They literally brought a submerged piece of land back from the sea. The whole reason behind creating Almere is to prevent the growing population of Amsterdam and the Randstad area from expanding into the designated green areas. And like the Garden City diagram, it's a number of semi-separate nuclei, each with its own neighborhoods, facilities, and identity, connected through a shared infrastructure and a city center. Different neighborhoods have distinct identities, from colorful rag and book boards to the diverse Homruskwartier with over 1,000 self-built homes. The districts are separated by water and parks and woodlands or agricultural land where they
really
produce
nice.
food. And apparently Almere has over 100% more green space per inhabitant than any other Dutch city of a similar size. It's the newest city in the Netherlands, and yet it's considered the most successful new town. It's only a few decades old, but it's become Netherlands' 8th most populated city. In a lot of ways, Almere sounds like the perfect implementation of Garden City and solarpunk ideals. But when you look closely, you start to notice behind the sustainable facade, it's also subject to the same economic realities as any other city. Because to build a successful city, for it to scale from a village to a city of thousands of people, you need capital for infrastructure, for governments, for administration. The locally grown food might not be enough to sustain this larger population, so maybe you have to transport food from other places. With a bigger population, there's probably going to be more waste and pollution, even if it's designed with sustainable principles, which again requires more money to manage. So most cities are designed and made possible within this capitalistic framework. Zoning regulations and even the layout of a city grid allows us to expand more efficiently compared to a more organic, mixed-use layout, which is harder to plan, and it's just hard to please everyone. The scale is usually way beyond human scale, because in order to maximize profit, you need to maximize the size of your building, often at the expense of green spaces or community spaces. Many public spaces are actually privatized, which can limit access to certain people. Even actual public spaces, like Times Square, can be taken over by private interests very quickly through marketing. Even things like transportation networks are designed to support areas with high economic activity or potential for growth. And of course, the thing that drives everything is land value. And so you have one party whose only interest is driving up the value of their properties, but that's also where people live. So there's kind of an inherent conflict there. Essentially, cities have very little to do with the collective good that solarpunk talks about, and a lot to do with individual or corporate wealth. And here we are again, the foundations of cyberpunk. So what if, instead of trying to force fit solarpunk into our existing idea of cities, we start from the ground up?
Companies have spent...
And yeah, I'm not sure what to say to that. I think she's going into the very right direction, saying that we can't really do those solar punk cities without actual, like capital and just having some income, like not income, but just basically have some business there as well. So I wonder what she have else to say. So, and almost there. with the first ad, and not there with the second ad, so I'll see you soon. Okay, I'm back, and I just jumped in. I can hear this raining again. Great. There you go. Boom.
This is Aardehuizen, again, in the Netherlands. It's a commune of 70 people who organize themselves into a sociocracy, meaning they make decisions through discussions and team consensus rather than voting. They also grow their own food, they share responsibilities, and they even build their own homes using mostly recycled, reused, and locally sourced building materials like tires filled with rammed earth. 70% of their electricity and 100% of their heating is generated on site, and they minimize energy intake with passive strategies. So from a social and organizational perspective, this is pretty solarpunk. And it's not like there's a size requirement for solarpunk, and it could definitely be a low-density settlement like this. Aardehuizen grew out of the Earthship movement from the late 20th century. The earliest community was built in New Mexico, and it spread to small pockets of communities around the world. And since they're built by the local communities with local materials and site-specific strategies, there's a pretty big diversity in the designs. But that just might be the problem. Okay, when you think cyberpunk, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Brutalism has always been a pretty polarizing architectural style. A lot of people absolutely hate these concrete monsters, but it turns out when you put them in the context of a bleak dystopian future, they actually have a certain kind of allure. So much so that they become kind of emblematic of cyberpunk.
True.
And this lack of a common architectural language in solarpunk might seem trivial, but architecture can often serve as the glue that binds social movements or a cultural ethos. Or as Mies van der Rohe said, it is the will of an epoch translated into space. For example, the Bauhaus movement was born as a response to World War I. It symbolized a vision of a new modern Europe. It emphasized functionality and simplicity, and it said no to unnecessary ornaments. It was so culturally transformative that the principle extended beyond architecture, from art to furniture and textiles. And I think it really brought people together. Solarpunk right now has a common aesthetic, but it's not really rooted in anything solid that our culture can grasp. So it's hard for us to imagine it really existing in our reality.
3, 2, 1.
In the last few years, we've made some pretty big leaps in energy storage, in electric transportation. We have net zero buildings, and also pretty efficient systems for food production. But if we are aiming for a true solarpunk society, and not the pretty solarpunk renderings that we see on Pinterest, the society outlined by these die-hard solarpunk fans, then there is a lot of economic, structural, social, and architectural challenges that we'd have to overcome. But maybe it's just this kind of thinking that's the problem. We've looked at a lot of cyberpunk themes on this channel, and I think it's tapping into this collective pessimism that a lot of us share. Okay, I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of indications that we're headed towards this dystopian future. There are. But we are kind of conditioned to expect the worst. Neuroscientific research into defensive pessimism tell us that pessimism can actually reduce anxiety, especially when the outcome still has the possibility to be prevented. And this is partly because the brain is predisposed to react more quickly and readily to negative stimuli compared to positive ones. I think one of the reasons cyberpunk wins out is because being a pessimist is easier. I remember taking this class on sustainability in university and just being completely and totally depressed because it just seemed like wherever humans go, ecological devastation inevitably follows. And this is the common rhetoric. And as we get older, I think we start to believe in this idea more and more. We start believing it's always been this way, so it's probably going to be this way in the future. The thing that I like the most about SolarPunk is the complete, blatant rejection of this idea that humans can exist and thrive with nature and technology, and that a beautiful, glowing, sustainable future is possible. It's solution-oriented rather than dwelling on the problem.
Well, yes, but not everyone would
It's
live like
the
that, though.
harder thing to do, and maybe that's what makes it worth it. Thanks for watching, guys. Which team are you on? Cyberpunk or SolarPunk? Let me know in the comments below. Also, we have a newsletter and a Discord server. We'll leave the links in the description. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.
So, I don't know. I do like Cyberpunk, although I wouldn't like to live in typical Cyberpunk cities. SolarPunk looks really cute and adorable and all that, but I think I would rather live in SolarPunk. So, yeah. And it's very good video as always from her. And okay. Thank you very much for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye.